citizen.
Out of many we are world citizen. Same vision is for equal rights and justice for the people them. What's happening to this beautiful world that we're living in? World citizen, lift up your voices.
Welcome to another episode of the People Powered Planet podcast, where each week we have amazing guests that are inspiring us with solutions. Solutionaries who, like Gary Davis, who inspired this whole People Powered Planet podcast, are looking to ways that we, the people, from the bottom up, can begin to create new, regenerative, new ways of healing our planet. We're especially pleased today. We've got a really, really special guest with us. He calls himself a facilitator and a map maker. You may remember, those who've seen our movie, The World Is My Country, that Gary refused to be considered the leader, that he when they wanted to give him power, he said no. He said, I'm just a citizen in the community of world citizens. We're all, the leaders. And like them, our speaker today considers himself a facilitator, a map maker. He's working in a community to develop a regenerative economic system and a regenerative political system and governing system for the citizens of this world. It's a decentralized cooperative, and he's building the tools, the grassroots tools for how can we, the people, create a new financial and a new economic system. And he talks about things like tokenomics and decentralized governance and building a regenerative financial system that can help heal our planet and our communities. Now, some of you may remember we had Anne-Lois Smitman on, who talked about the Seeds Constitution. She's another member of this group working in this innovative way. And so today, I want to give a very big special welcome to Reiki Corden.
Wow. Thank you. Yes, pleasure to be here. We had so much fun talking pre-recording, so I'd love to just hop back down into those conversations. But anyway, yes, lovely to be here. Thank you.
So it looks to us like you're on a journey, both in life and you're sitting there in your car. Tell us, what is this journey you're on right now? Journey that I'm on right now. So in this present moment, I'm sitting in a car in the middle of America. My wife and I, about a week and a half ago, we left Costa Rica. We left to go to Costa Rica from Bali. We've been living in Indonesia for the last 5 years. We're expecting our first child, which is what started my journey into seeds and this whole let's build a regenerative renaissance and we really need to build a different type of civilization was about 4 years ago. My wife had a miscarriage. It was the second time we tried having a child, and this one, from the moment we found out she was pregnant, it was just kind of terror that took over both of us because we weren't happy with the way we were living our life. We weren't happy with the way civilization was going. It didn't seem like we had a very bright future. Everything we saw was just protests. This is collapsing, financial systems collapsing. There's no hope. It was just so much of a mess that we had no faith in where everything was headed. And I think that anxiety and depression led to a miscarriage, and we lost our first daughter. And it was at that moment that we decided we were just going to fully dive in and do everything we could to help shift that story so that when we do bring children into this world, we're doing it in a way that we can really confidently get behind and be happy with the legacy that we're passing off to them, and have done some of the more heavy lifting to prepare the soil for them to be able to come in and not have to do what I'm currently doing. I'm exiting a system and trying to build a new one. I'm not able to come at it with a clean slate. I have so much bias that's already been programmed into me about how to see the world that I still have to be mindful of that. But fortunately, the children that we're bringing in right now, they don't have that. So we don't send them to the regular, public education system and go through that regular form of indoctrination. I think they can envision solutions that, we can't even fathom right now. So it's really, I feel like, my role to prepare the systems for them to be able to step into them and to be able to fully embody them. Wow.
Anyway, that's a whole other rabbit hole. Why I'm here is we found out we're having a new child. Bali wasn't our home. We were being called to Costa Rica to set up some eco villages there. That's something we can get into later about the need to re-indigenize ourselves, and maybe that's not really a word, but really connect to the land, and to figure out new governance and economic systems that we can use to facilitate that and enable it and finance it, which is a big burden for a lot of people. They don't have a good way of raising the funds to be able to buy land. So we've come up with ways to be able to solve that. And yeah, so we were headed to Costa Rica, but when we landed in New York, there's this big pilot strike and all the planes were canceled. And we left Bali under the guise that we were going to get to Costa Rica and we were just going to follow Spirit. Once we landed there, we're just going to follow our intuition to find out where home is going to be, and where we need to set up our land base, really connect with the earth and raise our child. What we didn't realize is that when we made that agreement, that was going to start right as we left Bali. And we weren't supposed to go to Costa Rica at all. And there's this whole other journey that has unfolded for us the last week and a half. And it's just been incredible and amazing. And I really feel like we're just in flow and synchronicity is just kind of unfolding. So I don't know what tomorrow looks like. I just know right now I'm in the car in the middle of America. We're headed to Denver right now to meet up with some really awesome change makers and projects that are happening in Denver. So we're going to go there, check some of them out and see how we can connect. But anyway, so that's where I'm at.
I really connected with what you said about leaving a heritage to our grandchildren and children. I feel that pain as so many do, as Greta and others have felt as they see again and again the current political system completely failing to be able to, no matter how much protest and the old system's broken and not working, and begging and pleading it, as Gary said, it's knocking our heads against the wall. When you see what's happened with, what's your sense of where we have to go to give hope to young people, and how does Seeds fit into that?
Yeah, so we touched on this a little bit before the show, and there's a phrase is, we didn't evolve beyond the monarchy by asking the king to make subtle changes, for begging for concessions. And it's very clear, COP26 is it now, geez. And you look at the, any metric related to ecosystem collapse, and they're unchanged, unperturbed. The trajectory is maintained the exact same after every single COP. So it's just a horse and pony show. But it's also not their fault, because the systems of capitalism, how our economies are set up, how the nation state system's set up, it causes all sorts of double binds where it's not in any nation's best interest to act first. So they're stuck in this prisoner's dilemma situation. Anyway, the game theory is completely broken. The tools they're dealing with, markets, capitalism, nation state, all of that structure is broken. So it's almost unfair to blame the players in it, to say it's their fault. It's like blaming the players for, properly playing Monopoly. At the end of that game, it's going to be one person holding all the assets. That's how the game ends. We can't blame the players for being selfish, because Monopoly itself is set up to demonstrate the problems of capitalism. And it does that well. Every game ends with the board being flipped and people getting pissed off and walking away, And I think that's the situation we have right now. We keep blaming politicians as if they actually have the power to solve this. They don't. Because the real problem is our economic systems, how they're designed. Everyone says, capitalism's, the worst thing besides all the others. Yes, we know it's broken, but it's way better than communism because all the people died, etc. So they brush away all of capitalism's problems because they say everything else is worse. But I think that's what we need to do right now, is demonstrate alternative systems that do work. And then we can say, actually, no, there's better alternatives here. These ones are working. We can adopt them. So anyway, that's I don't think political action makes a lot of sense. I think it makes more sense to design alternatives, inhabit those, and then just opt into them. And then we don't need to ask permission or do any of that. We just build the alternatives we need and we get going.
But that is so in line with the thinking of our founder, Gary Davis, who said the same thing. Why knock our heads against the wall, begging and pleading these leaders of these fictional nation states we've set up? They're not real. You look at it from outer space, there's no lines drawn all over the map. We've set up this fictional system and this fictional economic system as well, that is all in a human creation, and we can invent something different. And it's so crazy when we're stuck with, okay, which of these old things do we take? Socialism or capitalism? Those are the two things. And well, one's not working, the other's not going to work. Hey, that was 200 years ago that these things were invented.
Totally.
Horse and buggy days. It's time that we invent something new. And it's so exciting to see that you are working on inventing something new with a group of people. Tell us a little bit more about how can we start to plant the seeds for a better way to run our planet.
So I've been exploring all sorts of ways to answer this question, and my best current model has me about 10 one-hour videos trying to explain this answer.
Yeah, I've listened to many of them, and they're really very exciting.
There's a lot there, but really in short order is the tools that are being made available today with Web3. It's this jargony term that it's just a lot of hype and nonsense. And, actually I want to address something up front. You talked about, Ponzi scheme and people, concerned that seeds is a scam. I think that's a really healthy perspective. Just look at everything at crypto as a scam until proven otherwise. I think that's really healthy.
Let's start, before we get into that criticism, let's start with, I don't think people basically know what seeds is yet. What is seeds? Let's start with the basics.
Good point. Thank you. So seeds is, all right, I'll tell you how it started. It was about 4 years ago. I was working on something for intentional communities and eco-villages. It was called Our Neighbor Good, and it was a blueprint to help them coordinate at a local level to meet their needs. I'm really interested in local food. I really care about relationships with our natural world and being able to have food that's grown locally and produced locally and made with love locally. I'm all about that. So that's what I was really focused on. And there's a person doing a peer-to-peer local food platform. And it came to me because he knew I was been playing around with crypto. I got into Bitcoin back in about 2011. I started mining it back then. It was interesting and fun. It was more just because the dollar was terrible. And I was going down that lane, learning about the Federal Reserve, how it works. I was in the weird Reddit forums. That's where I heard about Bitcoin kind of early on. It was really interesting. It was very libertarian at the time. So I've been in crypto for a pretty long time. People knew that about me. And this is 2016 now. Crypto's getting all the hype. Everyone's launching a new blockchain, this and that, and raising a bunch of money. So this is when everyone's starting to reach out to me being like, hey, I know you're in crypto. How do I get in? And what if I do this with my business or whatever? But one of them approached me about doing it for a peer-to-peer food platform. And I'm like, okay. And I'm at that point in time, I'm just telling everyone, stop putting crypto on things. It's not going to solve the problem. But he planted that seed in my head. And it was maybe about a month later, I was doing this retreat. I was really trying to figure out the next stage of my life. And anyway, it was a little medicine journey for people to understand that. And in the middle of that journey, I got this inspiration of, it's hard to explain it. You start at the beginning of this where I say I'm not a founder. I don't think I am. There's this vision that's wanting to be born, and it's pulling a bunch of us together to serve it. And that's kind of what happened in that moment. There's this vision of a new world that was wanting to be birthed, and it kind of tapped me on my shoulder and it was like, hey, this is your role in it. Bring this new financial system to a local food system. Because what they are trying to solve with the peer-to-peer food is if there's a platform connecting two people to sell food and the platform's taking a 5% fee, you're not going to use the platform. You're going to look at it and be like, oh, Bob across the street, he's selling a pie. Cool, walk over there. Hey, Bob, you got a pie? Here's $5. Cool. You build a relationship with the people who you're buying food from, so you avoid the platform. And if the platform can't charge fees, it can't monetize and can't grow, and they kind of die. So a lot of peer-to-peer food platforms like that have, tried to get started and failed. And that's what I originally told him. And that's when he told me about adding crypto to it. So where the crypto story comes in is crypto could be a new financial system. Just like central banks right now, they made $10 trillion since the pandemic. What could we have done with that money otherwise? Could that money gone to subsidize local food systems to make them better than free, so that healthy local regenerative food is cheaper than McDonald's or that crap food that pretends to be food? Absolutely, we could have done that, but we didn't. So this is what we can do if we have our own financial system, so that as people join this local food economy, as more people come in, more businesses come in, we grow the economy. As the economy is getting bigger, we can make new money, just like central banks do, and then use that new money to pay people who are a part of it and pay the developers for building the platform and all that stuff. So long story short is we could have made a better than free peer-to-peer food platform. And instead of charging you fees to use it, it rewards you. So that's where Seeds kind of started, is like, let's make a better than free peer-to-peer food platform. Cool. As we got going and we designed the economy for that, we're like, wait, well, this works for anything beyond food. This is just a new economic system. So, anyway.
That is fantastic. So that's an incredible concept. We think of when we spend money back and forth and we're using these dollars, we're not realizing that somehow in doing that, central banks are able to make trillions of dollars off of us, and that's a lot of money that's unaccounted for, that we have no say where that money goes. Wow. So there's this pool of money that's happening and going to somebody that we're not getting.
Oh, absolutely. And we're paying the blunt of it with inflation. Right now, inflation officially is at 5+%. That's insane. That means if you're not getting a pay raise by at least 5% every year, you're getting a demotion because your money is becoming worth less and less. So it's just insane.
So somehow you figure out a system where we could tap into it, where we can all be interactively using an alternative financial system that is not only making it possible and not charging fees, but that somehow can actually be rewarding when you do positive behavior for the planet. Is that right?
Yeah, so let me just explain. The simplest way of looking at it is saying we're just basically replacing central banks and giving us the power. And by us, I mean the people. So I could say what would make us obsolete tomorrow. If tomorrow you gotta, everyone read the newspapers and it's like, hey, central banks decided to go completely democratic. And everyone who uses dollars now have a direct vote on how the Federal Reserve operates, who's in charge of it and what the policies are going to be. And we're going to put 30% of our inflation towards financing regenerative projects and all of these mandates to fund a UBI and all that stuff. Then everything we're doing at Seeds would probably be useless. So that's essentially what we're doing with Seeds, is we're creating a financial system that's governed by the people. So when our economy grows, we're able to create new money. And then it's this new money and how we program and spend it out, which is where everything gets really interesting. Because we could set up incentives for businesses to be more regenerative because we're going to give them more money. In the old world, that would be exactly what central banks are doing, where they're subsidizing. Okay, we're subsidizing logging. We're making it so cutting down old growth rainforests, some of the last in the world, they're not even normally profitable. They're only profitable now because we're subsidizing them and literally paying money to chop down our forests. We are paying money to subsidize industrial agriculture when we need to be subsidizing regenerative ag. And chemical companies, we're subsidizing pharmaceuticals. We spent over $5 trillion subsidizing oil and gas. So all of the central bank money is going to fund and finance all of the problems. So we want to create a new financial system that's doing the literal exact opposite, or funding and financing all of the solutions, like regenerative agriculture, local food systems, et cetera. So the parallels are basically the same. We're just creating a new financial system that, instead of it being governed by a handful of people behind closed doors, it's governed by everyone who uses it. It's fully transparent. And the new money that's being generated by the system, same way central banks do it, is going towards funding all of these things that we choose and we care about.
Wow. Sure. Wow. It reminds me, there's a great little video you can Google on YouTube. If you put Dinosaur United Nations, where there's a YouTube that the United Nations Development Program actually put out, where this dinosaur comes tromping into the UN, shocking everybody and saying, hey, folks, we know a thing or two about extinction, and at least we weren't financing the meteors. We weren't subsidizing the meteors to come destroy our planet. This is extinction, folks. Wake up. I think that's crazy. You're right. Every single bad thing for our planet, we're subsidizing, and the things we vitally need are hardly getting any subsidy because they don't have because in that broken political system, it forces that. We could get the best, we could get an angel as president. I think with Obama, we had somebody who was very well-intentioned. There's a great video of all these wonderful things that presidential candidates have said and how they don't do it. They do the opposite. Because it's not because they're bad people or they were lying. They meant it. They meant it from the bottom of their heart. They can't do it. They're stuck in a broken system that forces them to do that. And it pushes them in every way, So the only hope is not to reform that, not to do that, to start from the bottom up, that we, the people, have to create something new. And we have to scale it up quickly because the planet needs it. So tell us a little bit more about how you're trying to create an economic system, a new experiment with, and see how we can actually create a new economic system that can be from the bottom up. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what gives governments power? Governments have power because they intermediate assets. So who owns what? So they can have a ledger of who owns what. They create money and they have military might, right? So when we're talking about creating alternatives, this is why, SEEDS is really centered on creating a new financial system, because it's at the foundation of what the old systems and how they control. Money is that coordination medium that they use to coordinate at scale. So that's where SEED starts off, is creating a new financial system. But then what, got really interesting is how we govern that. And that's what we're really exploring right now, is what does decentralized governance look like and how to do that effectively. So HIFA, HIFA is the organization that I'm a part of. It's a decentralized Hellenic organization is what we call it. It doesn't exist legally anywhere, it just exists as software on the internet. It's never owned a bank account. It doesn't sign legal contracts, but it has moved around $20 million worth of value and employed 150 plus people at one point, building all sorts of different open source tools. So everything HIFA builds is free and open source. It just builds it, puts it out there. It hasn't charged for access of anything right now. Why am I telling you all of this? I'm not entirely sure. Kind of got sidetracked.
So basically, this is inventing new procedures. Somehow it's managed to pay people to work on that, which is, and that money is somehow being generated from where?
Right. So let me actually explain HIFA a little bit more. So HIFA was a group of people that were building stuff, and we needed to coordinate and organize ourselves. We also need to account for contributions. I was putting in a lot of time. I wasn't getting paid for it. So it's the same question that every startup has. So what HIFA started doing is we created this new token called HIFA. And we used it that anytime someone gave $100 worth of a contribution, whether investing $100 or working for $100 worth of time or whatever, they earned 100 of these HIFA tokens, or an equal amount. So that's how HIFA ended up getting set up and getting investors to fund it and to help us build our tools, is people are coming in and trading whatever capital they were bringing to the equation for these HIFA tokens. And HIFA used that to fund itself to build SEEDS. And then after it launched SEEDS, it asked the citizens and it said, hey, we helped launch you. How about you pay us some SEEDS for doing that? And it had to make a proposal to all of the citizens of SEEDS, because HIFA doesn't own SEEDS. HIFA is building tools for this new economy that's governed by the citizens of that economy. So HIFA had to ask permission to pay for itself for building SEEDS to begin with. It's kind of interesting. So that was a proposal that happened, 2.5 years ago, I think. So that's HIFA then got some SEEDS for that. The citizens agreed, said, yep, thank you for building us. You've earned these SEEDS, and paid us for doing that work. And then HIFA was taking those SEEDS and selling them. So HIFA got paid for building SEEDS, earned some SEEDS for doing that. And then it's trading those SEEDS for dollars. So people who want SEEDS, they can come and buy them from HIFA. And that's what happens when you go to joinseeds.earth and you buy SEEDS from that. At least that's what was happening. And this is the beauty of everything we're doing here, is the citizens said, hey, you know what? We don't want just HIFA to get rewarded when someone buys SEEDS at joinseeds.earth anymore, because it's way beyond just HIFA that's building it. There's 10 of our organizations. So they put up a proposal to take over the seed sale from HIFA and make it a seed sale. So that now there's like 7 different organizations now that are all sharing the revenue from that sale. So anyway, that's just something that evolved. But that's where the money kind of comes from, is when the people then buy SEEDS from HIFA, then HIFA uses those dollars or Bitcoin or whatever to pay for salaries and stuff.
So let's go back a little bit to basics a minute. There's the kilowatt dollar that Gary Davis invented way back in 1957. This whole idea, this whole click in our thinking that we can go from being the governed and the people who participate in the financial system to actually be the creators of something new is something that Gary was advocating. Basically, at a fundamental nature, what is really cryptocurrency, and how does that give us the power to start, instead of just making money off it, do something positive for shifting the planet?
Yeah, so the simplest way I can explain it is it's about trust. So the cryptography part about it is that's what creates trust. Without having to trust in something or someone, you trust in code. And you can trust in code if you can look at it. But most people who aren't, technical themselves, they trust in the fact that if someone smarter than them knew how to break it, then they could get billions of dollars. And that hasn't happened, so they trust in that. So that's really what blockchain and crypto and all of that is about scaling trust. Because before, if we created a new money system, then you might be trusting whoever's issuing that new money system to, fudge the numbers or just make themselves some more new money or do all sorts of different things. Or if it was really revolutionary and going to change the system, then it could just get shut down really easily. So that's where crypto kind of changed the game, where no new money experiment has been able to really do that before, is it could scale trust and it could not be shut down. So it's kind of unstoppable. And that's what got really exciting. And that's where, I think if he was alive today, he would definitely be designing his currency, using one of these Web3 systems for doing it.
So this is really a revolutionary idea, that an evolution and revolutionary idea, and that is that we, the people, can actually begin to create new currencies, new financial systems, and then begin to scale them up into something big, and that we can do it I guess the big difference between you and these other cryptocurrencies is that we don't even know who's running them or what's happening. Apparently, I watched one of your videos. You have a very transparent process where everyone who comes aboard in this can actually see exactly the inner workings of how it all works. Tell us about the transparency a little bit, a minute.
Well, that's double-sided. It was kind of like the two dystopian futures, one where we burn all the books and there's no access to info, or the other one where there's so much information that it's just like we don't have any. So that's the kind of the problem we're dealing with, is literally everything is transparent. I mean, who's getting paid, where are we paying it, all of our funds, all of our ledgers, all of our conversations, every call we have, like everything's recorded and shared. Like our entire organization is open source. But that also is very difficult because people who jump down the rabbit hole, they're like, whoa, this is overwhelming. There's so much, I don't even know how to show up. Like, I can't find the information because it's so overwhelming. So it's kind of both, but it's really interesting because it's a completely different way of doing things in a way that other people can plug in much easier. We don't have like an HR department. We don't hire and fire people. We have this open contribution system. So the best people that have showed up to come create with us came out of, I have no idea where they came from. They just showed up, started contributed a lot. All of a sudden they're in an assignment and a role, and they're a colleague of mine, and we've been working together. So it's really interesting seeing that we don't have this like difficult hiring, firing process or anything like that.
That reminds me a lot of Gary's system, which he called Syntegrity, which was a synergy with integrity, which was based on Bucky Fuller's geodesic sphere concept. His idea was that, the old organizational chart has the king or president on top and then those underneath. And that if you change that organizational chart to a geodesic sphere, then all of us can be on top in our area. If you took a company, while the president's on top in terms of administration, the janitor's on top in terms of keeping the bathroom flowing, or the whole thing's going to shut down if they're all overflowing and don't function. So everybody's a crucial part of it. And they can all jump into these interactive Syntegrity groups, these smaller groups that then interact with others, and they begin to interact in a way where we create a new governing system for the planet. It seems to me in a way that's what you're doing, where all of us could become first visitors, and then if we want, citizens of Seeds. Tell us about that process and how people can jump in and be a part of that.
Oh, yeah. So I'll tell you about the visitor to citizen process, but I did want to jump down a little bit of a rabbit hole to explain where we're going with governance, because we get to program new type of governance systems. So for example, you said everyone could be the leader in their area of expertise. We could start programming our governance systems to acknowledge that. So someone who's been, for example, a permaculturist, they've been growing food systems for, 3 years. They've been getting paid for the last 3 years to do that. They could have this badge that's on chain showing, there's a 3-year history of their permaculture record. So every proposal that's dealing with food or environment, they're going to get a 3x boost on their vote. So their voice is going to be worth a little bit more in that area because they've shown some wisdom and knowledge in that area. And this is something that we're exploring with our governance systems now, is like, how can we, give people who have domain expertise more voice in those decisions, so that we can start solving some of the problems with democracy today, where it's sometimes, mob mentality, or, there's a whole lot of other problems that come with that, where we can instead really pull out the wisdom of the crowd. So I was just giving you one example of one experiment we're running, but there are dozens that are happening right now of rethinking how we actually come together to make decisions so that we can pull out the wisdom of everyone that's involved. So that's kind of the end game. How we're going about it is there's a bunch of different experiments and we're trying a whole lot of things, but we all share the same objective to try to redesign our governance systems to really, best capture the wisdom that we're all holding.
Wow. I love that. Let me jump in a little bit a second before you get to the details of how we become a part of that. This is so crucial. And that is that, these back in the horse and buggy days, the only way you could have government of, by, and for the people was to send people off by horse and buggy to a distant city to govern for us. And now we're stuck with that, where we're sending representatives who become a magnet, as Gary says in the film, for special interest money. And that system's taking us down toward extinction. The idea, one person, one vote, was a very crude thing. We are so much more than a vote. We have all these skills, powers, things we're putting into things. If we design an economic system, if we design a political system where the more we contribute, the more we have impact in that area. As you mentioned, the person who knows a lot about regenerative agriculture can have more say about that thing. Well, that's a system that can start working, because it's a race to the top. The current system is a race to the bottom. Instead, we create a system where not just one person, one vote, but that we're all citizens. Everybody has an impact. Everybody can have a say. But the more you study and understand and get tokens from others of appreciation for what you're doing for the planet, the more impact your contribution makes. And this isn't all about, gimme. This is about who can contribute most and who can bring to the top the best systems. And the thing that strikes me as so amazing is that if you could have an interactive kind of Zoom talk where you had people across the political spectrum, so you have Arabs and Israelis, or you have, Trump supporters and Democrats. If you have them in the same room, and the question isn't who's right and who's wrong, who's going to outvote the other, but what is it we really want in our hearts? What kind of a future do we want? What do we want our children to live in tomorrow? What do we want the world to look like? If we could have the world look the way we want for our children, what would we want? We would start finding amazing synergy. I mean, everybody would love, I know you've got the vision of a future in which you can actually drink the water from the creeks again, and where you can actually have clean air. Who's going to not want that? If you're starting to picture, what do we want in the future? Or do we want to feel peaceful and secure? And then you're going to start finding that we're all coming together. We all want the same thing. And if we take it out of that clash, win-lose democracy where, okay, no, we don't care that we don't agree with this guy 100%. He's the one for us, so we're going to vote. We're going to create this system that's failing. We can start igniting something new. And so, tell us a little bit more about how we can be a part of creating such a system where we each can give the most rather than have we grab, get the most.
Come on, man. You gave me like 15 different rabbit holes that I could have gone down there. That was so good.
I'm just so excited about the whole idea. We need 5 hours. We have them. Everybody can go to the website, and we'll put a link in there where you can listen to hours of these wonderful talks with Reiki. But go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, so there's a couple threads. One of them is the idea that we can program our economic system. So as we continue to capture wisdom, we can upgrade it. Like, you can't upgrade capitalism. There's no place to say like, hey, there's a bug here, let's upgrade it. Let's update that bug. Like, we can't do that. It literally doesn't work. So if everyone points out having a problem, there's no way of really, fixing it. And that's kind of the situation we're in. So that's where I think, like, the idea of 49-51 democracy anyway just blows my head, because that means at any point, like 40% plus of the population is very unhappy with the current situation. So that's what's really also awesome about Web3 economic systems, is they're so easy to enter and exit. You can't have a situation where half the network is saying we don't want to go somewhere, because then you can fork. And this happens all the time in crypto projects. If half the community doesn't like what's happening, they just literally split the network. They say, okay, we're going to go off on our way. And this is how evolution works. This is how we get more diversity over time. Some experiments thrive and they get bigger, and some die and fade out. But then that's giving everyone kind of that freedom to be able to go to the system that's best serving their needs and best meet their values. Because that's the reality today. If we don't have that fundamental freedom to choose what type of economic and governance system we want to be a part of, then we don't really have freedom. Everything else beyond that's superficial. You know, you get to choose between Pepsi or Coke. You know, that's not a choice. It's both poison, you know? And that's kind of what we're being offered today with our democratic systems. Like every option is bad for people. So that's what we're fundamentally creating here, is a way to opt out of that system altogether and opt into a new one. And that's what Seeds is all about. And there's a new financial system there, a new governance system there. So it's saying, look, stop using dollars and euros and yen or whatever, start using Seeds in your interactions. Like we just opt out of those systems. Spend all of your energy and mental capacity upgrading these new systems. Let's start focusing on solutions and start working out, you know, running more experiments, running more pilots, learning, up-leveling. So that's where our creative energy is going, not, you know, did you hear this politician said this or that or whatever.
Yeah,
you know, so it's just literally shifting all of our creative energy towards building the new world and envisioning it and asking that question that you asked a lot, like, what's the more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible? What is that? Good, that's it. How do we get there? Let's create a concrete plan. Let's build paradise, you know? Like we don't need to just keep going down the rabbit hole of destruction. So anyway, that's the pitch. How do you get involved? We have this visitor resident citizen process. I'll tell you why it exists, because that's important. Because it's literally going through the process of changing right now. Because the citizens that were part of it, they're like, we don't really like this. It's set up a little bit weird. So there's a referendum literally up right now today. For the next 2 weeks, it's being voted on to change the process to become a citizen. Because some people felt like it looked a little bit scammy. But anyway, the main reason is to make sure we don't have any robots, to make sure people are actually human and they're making some type of contribution. Because in an open system like the one we have now, we don't KYC anyone, which is know your customer, which is like take your information. There's no central entity to check, you know, are you human or not, and to give you authority to, you know, vote. So we do that through this complex system of vouching and you having to add value to the system and all these things. So that's the process from moving to visitor to citizen. And in the passport, each one of them tells you the next steps to take, and it should be pretty easy. You can come into the Discord too and just say, hey, you know, I want to be a citizen. Someone show me how. And there's tons of people there to say hi and, you know, get to know you and walk you through that process. It's kind of fun that way. But mostly it's just about making sure people understand the community. They've been around for a while, that they're not a robot. You're meant to read the Constitution, which you brought up before. So this is something that the Seeds community spent almost 2 years working on. Had hundreds of people leave comments and feedback and up-level it. And the 4 different major drafts it went through are just completely, everyone's just a complete evolution, fundamental shift from the other one. It's great. But what it came up with is just a beautiful, inspiring document. So it's really about making sure every citizen who's governing really understands the purpose, the vision, where we're going. So that's something that we're working on right now. You might have had Ana Losa on, but there's a working group with her included in it that's focused on that governance journey to help people really understand what it means to be a citizen and how to take that power back. Because our old systems were all about being subservient. They didn't want people being fully in their power. So that's what all the education systems are about, is being on time, being on the bell. This person's the boss, you're subjugated. You don't know the answer. They know the answer, all of that, story. So it's unfortunate that that's what we have to spend so much time unlearning. We can create tools that say, good, you're in the driver's seat. You have the power, you can drive whatever you want. And that's how Hyphen Seeds is. Like anyone can show up, start contributing and start getting paid. Like there's no barriers to anyone. But then we're still creating our own barriers. We show up, we're like, oh, I don't know what it feels like or it means to really be in my power. I'm used to someone telling me I have to, what to do. Like, why is there no boss? This is uncomfortable. I want to manifest a boss. And then they start putting all their energy on someone being a boss. And then someone's just getting pushed in that position, So it's this weird human dynamic where we're almost resisting really stepping into, our full power.
Wow.
So I think that's the biggest tension that we're really feeling, or at least this is from my perspective that I'm saying, is these tools are here to free us, but there's still a wall there that is preventing people from, stepping fully into that freedom. And part of that story is, oh, this is too good to be true. It can't be. That's a wall that we build up. It's I've been unhappy for so long that I won't risk trying to be happy again and feeling that we could actually do it. So I'm going to stay cynical and, keep complaining. That's a wall that we build up that prevents us from, fully exercising power here.
Wow, that is so parallel to Gary's journey where, when he had 20,000 people rallying with him at the Velodrome, wanting him to be the leader, chanting for him to be the leader. And he said, no way. He tore up the poster with his picture on it and said, you know, I'm not the leader. I'm just one of the citizens in the group of world citizens. But people seem to want that. And yet to empower people with their own leadership skills does take work and does take building it. And I'm so glad you're starting to experiment with it, because once people start tasting that I can really have some impact, once they have a tool where they can actually join this tool and it gives them the power to get together with other people in their community and clean up the creek in their area. And it gets them the power to get together with others and create this regenerative farm that's bringing them all this good produce. And they get to feel and experience with this tool that it's actually beginning to give them some way of actually having a say. And that's happening all across the internet. I mean, this is happening. We went from a world where we had one of our other podcasts was with Rob Call, who talked, it was about the bottom-up revolution, that in all parts of society, we used to have this sort of top-down, except back way back in the indigenous days where it was bottom-up, but this top-down thing where we're going to be told and controlled and all this, and we have to start tasting and being able to leap into our own power. So I know we have let's see, our time, we're getting close to where we better turn it over to questions. I have so many more, but we have some wonderful people aboard who've been a part of doing this kind of thing. So let me turn it over to Melanie to take some questions.
Thank you, Arthur. Reiki, I just want to let you know what diving into this world, the Seeds Project world, this whole community, beautiful community, has done for me. This is me before Seeds, after. I'm not kidding. The second I heard about it, and to me it speaks, the first thing that it spoke to me was, okay, incentivizing, getting people to do the right thing by using the system of money. So in other words, right now we're promoting bad behavior, me. I've got to save money because nobody's going to take care of me if I get sick. I've got to, and even if I have a lot of money, that's not enough. What if this happens? What if that happens? And there's no community sharing and thinking of the future. Or I always say, every decision you make, you should say to yourself, is this good for the future? Is this good for the world? Is this good for the community? Is this, every decision, and if everyone did that and opened their hearts to just the other people in the world, all these things working together to make this a thriving, beautiful planet for the future and the children. And I think people are starting to wake up and say, oh, goodness sakes, yes, I guess it's time. We better do something. So that's what's happening with Seeds. And like you said, that's evolving. It's so amazing to watch the changes that have happened. The citizens of Seeds saying, okay, let's do this now. And people, can just look for themselves and see how it works themselves, get on the calls and check it out themselves. Anyway, so I love it. Okay, now we do have a question. All right, John, you're up.
Yeah, I have many reasons why all of this is very familiar and all of it is very interesting. I'm working on many aspects of this, from governance issues to some blockchain projects, digital assets, all of this stuff. But one word got to me when I tuned in late, because I was coming off a several-hour session about some of those other things. And that was the word badges. That give people who have some reason why they have some extra weight given to what they say or positions they espouse. My immediate reaction to that was, where in this is honesty, integrity, ethics, and morality? Because intelligence, knowledge, skill, experience, you may be able to measure them, but they're irrelevant for those things. And the classic example there, just by coincidence, Los Alamos just came up, is atomic scientists. It's been said by many historians who've covered that they didn't score so high on that score, but people listen to them because they have all this authority. So I'm very wary about rating systems. I've been through this in the foundation and nonprofit world from another angle, which is how do you rate a consultant? How do you rate a trainer? How do you have validation for any opinion that you see for somebody's work? Maybe the firm took that on because they needed extra money, but it wasn't part of their expertise, and you're rating the whole firm because they did a stretch job and it didn't work out. Or there are all kinds of things that are problematic with existing rating structures. And so the question is that one about honesty, integrity, ethics, and morality. Thank you.
Well, yeah, that's a deep question. I think there's two philosophies, at least, that I would respond with. One of them is, I feel this, just like nuclear technology, it could be used to create or radically destroy, just like any fundamentally powerful technology. And I see the same thing we're playing with here is we have the capability to create a dystopia hell or a utopian paradise. And I think we're going to have both extremes kind of come out of this. And I kind of try to quantify it between the revolution and the Renaissance. But anyway, so I'm a little bit weary about having reputation systems too. Absolutely. These are experiments going on, and I don't know how they're going to pan out. And we're just being open to it and kind of playing with them. So we're at the very beginning stages of reputation systems of what we could track. And should we track it? And do we even want to? Is that really going to bring more beauty? Or is there better ways that we can pull out the wisdom of the crowd without trying to quantify that? We're dealing with objective systems. So whenever we're dealing with a measurement, we want to make sure it's objective as possible. So for example, being in a role where you're providing some type of wisdom for 1 year, 1 year is something objective. Been in that role for 1 year, that's something we can quantify. But like, are you speaking truth? How do we quantify that? And is it worth? Should we quantify that? So I don't know. So as much as I love it, I just don't know if it's the right domain to bring it in, and I don't know if we should do it at all. But we're at the tip of the iceberg here, so no.
Yeah, two things. One, that issue of experience, in the helping professions around jobs and careers. The truism is, you have 3 years experience. You have 3 years experience, or do you have 1 year's experience repeated 3 times? Which means right. There's experience and there's experience. My 1 year experience was something radically different from somebody else. But the big thing, I think a much bigger issue, is that of voting. One of my mentors, in this, was one of the creators of the whole field of participatory community organizing. And the essence of it, if you had to reduce it to one rule, which all of us in expert systems and artificial intelligence like to know, is if you have to take it down to one rule, what's the rule? And the rule is never take a vote. Why? Because you have winners and losers. And so what he developed over his career was a series of tools for doing participatory community organizing with populations. He's done it all over the world, and has a tremendous record of success with this. And the idea is that you have a methodology for getting all the necessary information out and all the participation, but never, ever take a vote. And so that's just the sort of very tippy tip of the iceberg of what his wisdom that he's developed is. And part of the proof of the pudding is that, maybe he got called into a little village in the Philippines because they had a problem with the road, getting muddy, and not being able to get their products out for most of the year. And so he did his participatory community organizing, and he's back there maybe 10, 15 years later, something like that. And this is a real case. And that problem has long since been solved, but they're still using his method because the method worked. They learned that they got success. They learned that it worked. They learned that it felt good. They learned that it promoted better relationships. It was just better than a voting system. So anyway, end of rant. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John. That's perfect. Now we quickly want to go to Merle. Merle, go right ahead.
I had a very simple question, which is the servers and the amount of energy, since I'm just back from Glasgow, as you know, Melanie. We're talking, I think, about a lot of energy use here. And so that's my question. And I know you've thought about it, but I'd love to hear your take on that.
Sure. Yeah. So Seeds is built on generation 3 blockchains, Bitcoin's generation 1. The simplest way I put it, okay, to sum it up, we use about 6 washing machines worth of electricity each year. Because Seeds isn't using electricity to do proof of work, which is what Bitcoin is doing. So Bitcoin is burning electricity to prove, and you get it. So it's just running Sudoku puzzles, essentially. We don't have that. We don't need that. We use a different consensus mechanism. So we use consensus through electing people to be, they're called block producers, but you can look at them as like stewards of the platform. So rather than machines everywhere just running a bunch of code and burning electricity, we instead elect people to govern the network. And then they just produce the actual blockchain. So we only need to use electricity to produce transactions, not do proof of work.
But so, as you do more and more transactions, won't that be using?
Kind of, but not really, because 6 washing machines gives us 10,000 transactions per second.
Yeah.
That's enormous. Bitcoin has like 7 to 13. Visa is doing a fraction of that or something. I don't know. So it only needs to scale linearly if we, scale transactions per second linearly, which if we were doing the whole globe, then we're using a few households worth of electricity. The point is like blockchain gets a lot of crap because of proof of work. And that's doable because it's a lot of waste. I call it proof of waste. We don't have that, so it's not really an issue. It's just the same as any network.
Thank you so much for that. And
that's probably a complicated way of answering that. So.
Well, that was good. That was good. Thank you, Reiki. And we're going to end exactly at 11. So I'm sending it right. Thank you, Reiki. And I'll send it right back to Arthur. Arthur, go, go, go.
Let's spend the last few minutes telling people how they can directly get involved in this. What can they do to be a part of this, and how can they get into it?
Sure. There's a moderate way to get into this, which is just using and adopting Seeds as a currency, telling people about it. That's great. The best way to get into this, which is way more time consuming, is to dive into the Discord and start creating. So I brought up that, no leaders bit and how it's uncomfortable because it's a new environment where we're trying to create a whole bunch of leaders. We need people to show up, be like, yeah, I'm completely new to this. That's fine. You could be the next leader. You could be the next, founder of this, driving it forward. All that takes is for you to dive in, have the fortitude to kind of get through the Discord, ask the right questions, feel into where you might be able to bring your gifts or talents. Let people know what your gifts or talents are, and they might be able to plug you in somewhere. And then just get building. That advice was given to some people in about a year ago. And 3 of those people went and set up entirely new organizations within Seeds. So they noticed that like, hey, it's very confusing showing up to Discord. So why don't we create a process that when people show up here, we're going to have an academy that helps teach them about what's going on here. So we're going to set up the Ambassador Academy. And then they just went about setting that up. And these were people that didn't ask permission to set up the academy. They just came in, saw that they were needing it, and set it up. And now what they've done is they didn't ask permission. They said, hey, instead of Haifa getting all the revenue from the seed sale, we would like some of that too to pay us for doing the Ambassador Academy. So they've, prompted like setting it up. So anyway, so there's funding systems for people to be able to come in, set up their own orgs, get compensated for doing what they're doing and help build it. So it's open. So how do you best show up? Show up, say what your gifts and talents are, and figure out a way to come play. Ultimately, we're building a new civilization economic system here. So as many roles as you think is possibly needed, like there's roles for all of that. And there's a lot of weird, wacky, and incredible and random stuff all happening at the same time. So
wow,
there's somewhere for everyone.
What a great party, and what a great game to be a part of, and what a great relief from a world of politics gone mad, and from your depression over what the world is doing, to at least begin to create some hope, because it is only through our vision and our hope that we can really build a better world. And that was why what Anelos was doing, because she's talking about getting this into a major motion picture and the entertainment industry, and begin to give people that vision of how this workable world would work. And that's kind of our mission here. We had a fantastic time over the weekend with Martin Sheen. You'll be able to go to theworldismycountry.com/series and see Martin Sheen talking about helping us to create a series out of Gary's book, My Country is the World. We need to use media and to really scale this up to a high level. What an incredible journey you're on, and we want to let you continue on your journey. Please do go to peoplepoweredplanet.com, which is a shortcut to theworldismycountry.com/club. Sign up to join get our continuing meetings. We actually are having a club holiday social next week, so you can join us and we can all talk about these issues and others in a more informal way. So jump aboard the same time next Wednesday. We are actually going to take a break over the holiday, but we'll be back on. We've got a lot of great speakers coming up. So join us, and thank you so much, Reiki. And we will continue on this journey with you. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being part of the People Powered Planet podcast. Join us this week and every week for exciting solutions.
World citizen, lift up your voices. Oh, you know we got something to say. All we need is the same directions, heading in one way.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel and like this video.